Contestants, are you all ready?
Yes.
Right. Help me welcome Sani with his speech on Move On. Move On to Sani.
Mr. Ndaba, your credit and criminal records have been checked and cleared. You may now move into the new apartment. But after you've paid your moving and fees, your rent plus deposit, your house checking fees, your contract fees, and your key fees. Now imagine my horror when I discovered that these are all of the things that I need to pay for in order to move out of the one single room that I've been sharing into this new bachelor apartment. Council's Chair, ladies and gentlemen, today I will share with you 2 stories about brave decisions that I took to move on, and also why some of you should do the same. When you move into a foreign city for an internship, you look for the cheapest accommodation you can find. And this accommodation is typically, well, cheap and temporary, but then also sharing. And there's nothing wrong with that in itself. Don't get me wrong. The only problem comes when you're sharing in the household of a landlord who's living with his family. And everything seemed to be okay, except for a few disagreements between the landlord and I. But the final straw was when, for the 3rd time that week, somebody had taken my parking spot, and I decided I need to move on. So, at the beginning of that month, I wrote in my monthly planner, move out. Mind you, I didn't know where I would move to. I didn't know how I would afford to move there, but I knew that the time had come. But fortunately for me, at the end of that month, the universe provided. And this is when I got this phone call. So, with this deal being set, I said goodbye to quiet hours because the baby's sleeping. I said goodbye to paying daily fees for every single day that my visitors had been around. I said goodbye to sharing a kitchen with people who have questionable definitions of what neat and tidy is. And I said goodbye to all the rules and sneaking in at night so you don't wake up the family. And I said hello to a balcony. And I said hello to entertaining guests at my will. And I also said hello to where I just have some freedom. And I was looking back and really proud of my decision for moving on until those beeps started coming in. Rent, levies, services fee. And I started having my doubts about whether I'd made the right decision. But this is what happens when you venture into new waters. You will always have your doubts. Which takes me to a story about how I had my own doubts when I got a job in Rustenburg in the mines. You're always told when you leave school how difficult it is to get a job, how much graduates are struggling to find jobs, and even see people getting retrenched. And the last thing you want to do as an inexperienced graduate is quit. But quit I did. But maybe I'm jumping the gun. Let me take a step back and tell you about the learnership that I got in a mine in Rustenburg. So towards the end of my studies, I'd been looking for a job, and luckily for me, the universe provided. And the job that I secured was in mining under a reputable mining firm in Rustenburg. And this was a sweet deal. It had food, three meals a day, transport, accommodation. They paid for you to further your studies, and we even got a stipend. The one catch is that we had to go underground. Now, underground is another world altogether. It's not for everyone, trust me. And typically, a day, which is 3 out of 5 days, when I was working at this mine in Rustenburg would involve me getting to work excited and clean, then having to head over to the change rooms, put on my overalls, put on my shin guards, put on my hard hats, then put on my portable light. Then I'd have to walk to the cage, wait for the cage to come, go down to the level I needed to be, and then imagine walking just a long tunnel and even having to crawl through spaces this small with tons of rock above and beneath you, just to get to that rock face where the men are drilling. You take your measurements, make notes of them, walk back to where the cage is, wait for the cage. It could take up to 2 hours. Wait for the cage, get in the cage, go up, write your reports, and I couldn't take it. Every day I was there, I felt my soul slowly getting eaten away. So I quit. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that is not what I wanted at that point in my life. And imagine leaving the comforts of a secure job for nothing. This was a challenging time, but within that month I applied for studies, which is into something I was passionate about, and got rejected. But then some people who had been accepted into the program couldn't attend. So then they allowed us to write an entrance test, which then allowed some of us to then get into the program, which eventually led me to doing what I'm doing to this day. The moral of these two stories is that I moved on. And I think some of us may be sitting here and we have our doubts about the decisions we've taken in the past to get us to where we are. Maybe we have a boss we can't stand, or a job that we hate. And we feel like we're stuck because who's going to pay for the kids' school fees for the next 15 years? Who's going to pay for that bond that you stuck paying for? And I mean, what if you get blacklisted if you default on your payments? These are valid and reasonable concerns for responsible adults. But I find that also a lot of the time we get stuck in the details and the logic and the costs that cripple us from actually pursuing the things that we're passionate about and moving on. So the message I'd like to leave with you today is, regardless of where you are, if you know if it's either something you don't want to do, or you know that there is something that you would rather do, put it out there to the universe. You have nothing to lose anyways. And move on. Conscious check.